Hey! How dare you leave the house without asking for my permission? I told you that you can't leave the house until I allow you to do so.
When I returned back home from the hospital, my husband, Drake, was waiting for me, looking all angry while he began to shout at me. Well, my dad collapsed, you know. Knowing that Dad fainted, there's no way I could stay at home only waiting for any news from the hospital about him.
Shut up. Your job is to obey everything I tell you to. If you're not satisfied with that, then you better leave this house right away.
Fine, I understand. Then whatever happens from now on, you better not complain anything to me, okay? My name is Monica. I'm 27 years old and I am a full-time housewife. It has been 2 years now since I have been married to my husband, Drake. My husband and I met through work, and I was working as a receptionist for the company I used to work for. My husband was one of our clients, working as a sales representative, and he often came to the office where I was at for business meetings and discussions. So from there, we have seen each other, and when we happened to see each other at a bar, Drake recognized me, and from there, we had a drink together and became good friends. From then on, we would chat here and there, even at work. And since we had exchanged contact information, we started going on dates on our days off. And after a few more dates, Drake confessed his feelings for me and we decided to go out. We then proceeded to date and continue with our romantic relationship pretty well, and he proposed to me, and we ended up getting married. My husband was 3 years older than me, and he seemed like a dependable, mature man. I like older men, and I especially like men who are really open-minded, so I think I was attracted to him because he took the lead and he was thoughtful, as well as very open-minded about things. I was so happy that I was going to marry him. It was like a dream come true to be with the man I would love forever. Drake asked me to become a full-time housewife after we got married, so I quit my job and became a full-time housewife. From then on, I worked very hard to support my husband by doing everything around the house. I vacuumed the room every day, wiped the floor, and made it sparkling clean. And I even took the time to do the laundry, clean the bathtub, and scrub the toilet. I even cooked dinner, and I would change the menu every day for a whole month to provide a nutritious and hearty meal for my husband. I also woke up early every day to make nice lunches for Drake. My husband seemed really satisfied to see me working so hard doing the house chores. By working hard like this, I get to support my husband. Thinking that gives me strength and makes me want to work even harder at house chores again. For about a year after I got married, I worked really hard at the house chores like this and kept a nice relationship with my husband. And that was why it was difficult for me to realize who my husband really was. I think it must have been partly because I was trying so hard to do all the house chores perfectly as a full-time housewife at first. However, it was not until the second year of our marriage that things began to happen, which made me gradually become wary about my husband. It happened one day when I came down with a fever. I rarely catch a cold, but that time I caught a rare cold and had a really high fever. I rushed to the hospital and got some medicine, but the fever did not go down and I was feeling quite ill. So I sent a message to my husband saying, "I have a high fever and don't have the energy to cook dinner, so please go out to eat or prepare it yourself." After sending that message, I went straight to sleep for the rest of the night. And when I woke up a few hours later, it was already past 8 p.m. I left the bedroom wondering if my husband was back home, but the living room was still dark. I looked at my phone to check for messages just in case if Drake was still working, but it seems like he had read my message, but he didn't reply back. Does that mean he agreed and understood? I decided to assume that my husband was just too busy at work to respond and that he had agreed to what I had sent him. Then, having regained some strength, I decided to make myself a bowl of soup. Then I heard the front door open. Thinking that my husband had returned home, I headed for the front door. "Oh, welcome home. So you weren't working overtime, honey?" I spoke to him, but he seemed to be in a bad mood.
What the? You look fine.
Huh? My husband said that and went into the house without really greeting me that he was back home. I followed Drake into the living room, where he turned around and glared at me.
Hey, what are you cooking?
What?
You said you can't cook for me, but you're cooking for yourself?
Oh, no, I'm just cooking an easy soup for me, you know. I'm finally feeling a little better, so I thought I'd have something to eat at least. I did my best to explain, even though I was scared of the scary expression my husband had. But my husband did not forgive me.
Wow, you're looking down on me like that, aren't you?
What? What the? Why would I even look down on you? When I sent you the message, I had a fever of over 104 degrees Fahrenheit, and I was having a really hard time. It was really difficult to cook in this condition, so I sent you a message beforehand, just in case.
You don't have to make any excuses here. It doesn't change the fact that you slacked off and trying not to cook for me. And if you have the energy to argue with me like that, you better start cooking for me now.
I was completely stunned. I never thought that my sweet husband would say such a thing. I was so upset and confused that I did as I was told and prepared Drake his dinner. I was really sick while I was cooking because I was still not in the best shape. I had just recovered my strength after a good rest and sleep, but now I was in the same situation as when I had the high fever in the morning. I managed to finish cooking the meal and put it in front of my husband. My husband had a stern look on his face as he quietly proceeded with his meal. I got up from the table to go lie down on the sofa while Drake ate. But then, my husband stopped me and said,
Hey, where are you going?
I thought I'd lie down on the couch for a bit. As I said this, my husband put down his fork and sighed.
You're not behaving like a good wife at all, are you? Was the first year we got married a miracle? Or are you saying that you gradually lost more focus and you're gradually slacking off around the house?
What? What are you talking about?
If you're a wife, you normally sit across from your husband and wait until he's finished eating.
Huh?
My God, you're really a terrible wife.
As you can see from our conversation up to this point, my husband is clearly an arrogant, bossy, strict, old-fashioned man. Lately, he has been really demanding and treats me terribly with his strict attitude. I have to wait for my husband no matter how late he comes home. When Drake works late, he sometimes comes home after 10 p.m. or 11 p.m., and I can't eat until that time, as I have to wait for him. It is very hard for me to have to wait until that time without being able to eat. But if I ate dinner first before Drake, he would get really angry with me. So I have to wait for him to come home while I practically starve. Every day I have to wait for him to come home while I got really hungry. Plus, my husband has become more strict with me than before.
Hey, didn't we eat the same pasta the day before yesterday? Aren't you being too easy on yourself, Monica? Not only should you change the menu every day, you better also change the type of dishes too. I don't want to eat Italian food every day.
It's normal for me to get overwhelmed when Drake makes such unreasonable demands like this. It's not like I'm his personal housekeeper. My husband's unreasonable demands made me worry a lot about our future too. But still, I have to do my best to take care of the house. I mean, I got to marry the man I love so much. I think I was still mentally unstable and immature at the time, or perhaps I was still narrow-minded. I was convinced that if I left my husband, I would become an unemployed, divorced, 26-year-old woman, who would have no choice but to be just depressed my whole life because of our divorce. So I had no choice but to endure, even though I thought Drake was being really unreasonable. In the meantime, my husband would say all kinds of terrible things to me.
You really are a useless, good-for-nothing wife. If it weren't for me, you wouldn't have gotten married. I married you, so you should be better as a wife and as a person, Monica.
Why do I have to be told these terrible things by Drake? My husband's continuous verbal abuse was driving me crazy and making me go mental. And there was one thing my husband did that annoyed me immensely because of his strict, arrogant attitude. Drake made a permission system whenever I needed to go out somewhere. So with this stupid system that he made, I couldn't even go grocery shopping freely without his permission.
You waste my money as soon as I take my eyes off you.
My husband would say that to me. I am sure he was referring to the time I had a get-together with our neighbors. But it's not like we ate something expensive, and it's not like I go to the get-together frequently. But even so, my husband didn't like me going to these things. Drake remembers that time when we both bumped into our neighbor's wife when we were walking outside together, and she said, "I like the cafe with the cakes, which you introduced the other day, Monica. Thanks for telling me about it."
You're probably secretly going to some fancy hotel for a lunch with them or something, aren't you?
I insisted to Drake that I did no such thing, but he didn't believe me at all. So I had to ask permission from Drake and always ask if I was allowed to go out. From then on, I would ask for permissions to go out so as not to irritate my husband, but he rejected most of my permission requests. The only time he would give me permission was always for grocery shopping. The grocery shopping on the weekend was a blissful moment for me, but to my surprise, my husband accompanies me every time these days.
The more people, the better, right? I really am a sweet husband, aren't I? Hey, you agree, right?
Yeah. I always felt threatened around Drake. I began to think that I wanted to get out of this crappy situation as soon as possible. And that was when something happened. I suddenly received a phone call from my mother. What on earth could it be? I answered the phone right away since I got worried. Then my mother sounded very upset and said, "Your father." Apparently, my father had collapsed. I immediately got into a cab and headed for the hospital. When my mother and I arrived at the hospital room, my father was sleeping. According to the doctor, Dad had a stroke. If he had been left unattended for a while, his life might have been in danger. My mother and I both were scared and worried, but we were relieved to know that Dad was safe now. But I had forgotten one important thing. I had gone out without permission from my husband. No, but this was an emergency situation, and my husband would probably understand. Well, that's what I thought, but it seems that my husband was not that mature.
Hey! How dare you leave the house without asking for my permission? I told you that you can't leave the house until I allow you to do so. When I returned back home from the hospital, my husband, Drake, was waiting for me, looking all angry while he began to shout at me. What Drake said was completely unreasonable, and I couldn't help but to go against it. Well, my dad fainted, you know. Knowing that Dad collapsed, there's no way I could stay at home only waiting for any news from the hospital about him. My husband flinched for a moment, but soon his face turned red and he argued back. Shut up! Your job is to obey everything I tell you to.
Then my husband began to say something really shocking.
If you're not satisfied with that, then you better leave this house right away.
At this point, I heard something snap inside me. I couldn't stay married to this man any longer. Fine, I understand. Then whatever happens from now on, you better not complain anything to me, okay? I said this coldly and began to pack my bag.
You're a really stupid woman to go so far as to go against me and disobey me like this. You could be replaced at any time, anywhere, you know.
My husband kept verbally abusing me like that until I left the apartment. I managed to ignore him and walked away and went to my parents' house. My mother was surprised that I came back home with such a big luggage, but after hearing what happened, she told me that I should have left Drake as soon as possible. I started living at my parents' house, thinking that I would end up divorced. Then, about a month after moving back to my parents' house, my husband began to call me non-stop.
Hey, when are you coming back here? If you don't, our apartment will be full of trash, and I won't be able to sleep well in here.
Well, why don't you just gather all the garbage and trash and throw them away yourself?
Well, actually, when I was throwing out the trash, the apartment landlord warned me. He told me to recheck the rules on taking out the garbage. I didn't know what day of the week I should trash the garbage, so I had no choice but to bring them back in. And then, before I knew it, there are garbages everywhere. Plus, the bathroom and toilet stinks really badly. Hey, please, can you hurry up and come back home, Monica?
That's impossible now.
Why is that?
Why do I have to throw away your trash or clean up the mess you've made?
Because you're my wife, so it's only normal to clean up after me, right?
That's what I'm talking about.
Excuse me?
You think it's only natural that the wife does all the house chores, don't you? And you think that the wife cannot disobey her husband, right? Well, I am fed up with how you think, as well as your strict, arrogant attitude. I can't live with you anymore because you don't seem to change your point of views even in a situation like this right now.
What are you trying to say?
Let's just get a divorce.
What? Divorce? No way. Please think it over. I will never divorce you.
My husband really didn't expect me to say divorce, so he resisted like that many times. But I have an ace in my sleeve. Even if you refuse like that, I can still get a divorce from you.
What do you mean?
I have been recording you harassing me and verbally abusing me for some time. And I consulted my lawyer with this evidence, and he told me that I could get a divorce because of what you have been doing and saying to me, Drake. So I'm going to ask for a divorce through my lawyer and demand compensation as well.
No way! Hold on a minute. Please, forgive me.
My husband pleaded me to take back what I said, but I did not forgive him, and simply told him to contact my lawyer for the rest and hang up the phone. I then managed to divorce Drake, and he had also paid me the compensation for emotional distress he caused me. I am now living at home and working at an office where my aunt introduced me to. My ex-husband, on the other hand, says that his workplace has found out that I left him because of his verbal abuse and harassment, and since word spread out, Drake probably feels really small working in that environment where everyone knew who he really was and how he treated people. Plus, Drake's apartment is still dirty, and because of that, he was recently evicted from the room. I am amazed at how Drake could be so strict and arrogant when he can't even take care of himself at all. Well, I don't really care because it is no longer any of my business. I experienced a lot of difficulties, but I decided to look at it positively, saying that this was one of my life experiences, and that now I'll be even more careful when choosing my partner. For now, I will work hard at the job that I have, and I will spend time with my parents to take care of them. What Drake was doing to Monica is completely a harassment, wasn't it? Drake really is the worst. I mean, normally, if you hear that your wife's parents collapsed, you would be worried for that person. And yet, Drake yelling at his wife is just unbelievable. What Monica did was right, to leave Drake. I hope that Monica will be able to meet a wonderful man this time. I wish her a happy life from now on. Thank you for watching until the end. Please subscribe to our channel. We hope to see you in our next video.